Committee meeting of the West Bend School District and School Board. It is 4:30 p.m. on February 20th, and we will start with introductions. I'm Melanie Ergott, School Board Member.
June Kruger, School Board Member.
Kelly Lang, School Board Member.
Quinn Trueblood, Director of Curriculum and Instruction.
Erin Faust, Program Administrator, Curriculum and Instruction.
Tina Van Roo, District Data and Assessment Coordinator.
Kelly Downs, Curriculum Coordinator.
Heather Isaacson, Program Administrator, Curriculum and Instruction.
Excuse me. All right, it looks like we will begin with our presentations and discussions. And our first one up is the Immigrant Children and Youth Grant for 2023-2024, and that was prepared by Michelle Garcia, our multilingual family engagement specialist and English language instructional coach. You can come on up.
Hi, I am pleased to welcome Michelle Garcia. She has been working really hard on the Immigrant Children and Youth Grant, and her title is a mouthful because she does so much for our district and our EL population. Welcome, Michelle, and we're eager to hear what you have to say.
Thank you so much, Heather, and to the Curriculum Committee for having me today. Is this loud enough?
Start over, Michelle. Joy, can you help her?
Strength. Ooh. Okay. My apologies. Thank you, Heather, and thank you to the Curriculum Committee for having me here tonight. I'm so excited to share the celebration of the Immigrant Children and Youth Grant for West Bend School District this school year. Again, my name is Michelle Garcia, and I work with our multilingual families and students all throughout the school district and in the West Bend community. And I just wanted to start out with a little bit of background on what the grant is all about and how we got chosen, and then give you a little introduction to what we're doing as part of the grant activities. I like to keep my slides brief, so if you would like any elaboration or more information, I invite you to please ask questions or interact during the presentation as well. So the Immigrant Children and Youth Grant is offered as a Title III discretionary grant through the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction, or DPI, and they release a list every March of school districts that are eligible to apply. So in order for a school district to be eligible, they must show an increase of 25% or more of immigrant students in their district for that school year, compared to the previous 2 school years average. So last year, West Bend School District had a total of 47 immigrant students, which was a huge 66% leap compared to the numbers that we had the 2 previous years as an average. And this is a varied, eclectic student group that represents 17 different countries and 13 different languages. So the majority of those are Spanish speakers from countries like Mexico, Honduras, Nicaragua, for example. We also have a group of families from Afghanistan who speak Dari and Pashto. And we also have students that are coming to us from China, Japan, India, Mongolia, to name a few. So as you can see, we are very lucky to have a whole global community joining us as part of our immigrant student group. Wisconsin DPI defines immigrant children and youth very specifically. A student needs to fall into all 3 of these criteria in order to be formally labeled with immigrant status. And that is being 3 through 21 years old, not being born in any of the United States, and not having attended school in any of the United States for more than 3 years. So that means that our students, once they've attended our schools for more than 3 years, they lose that immigrant status. So the funds are for 1 year between July and June, so a school year. And typically school districts are awarded between $10,000 and $40,000. In order to conduct the eligible activities under the Title III, or the discretionary grant. That includes getting our immigrant families more engaged or involved, informed about school, training our staff on how to do best practices with immigrant students, and using like native language resources and supplemental materials that build upon their orientation to the United States. So our great news is that our first year of eligibility to apply for this grant, we came in first place out of all of the 19 school districts that applied throughout the state of Wisconsin. And we were awarded $70,000, which was the most in the entire state. So we're super proud of that and really excited to get to implement these extra grant dollars with our students. So I'm going to give you an introduction to our grant project, which is called Empowering Tomorrow's Leaders, Amplifying Literacy and Family Engagement for Immigrant Students. So you can think of the grant project as a two-pronged approach. The first and foremost being our academic goal. So we want to increase our immigrant EL students' reading achievement and growth within reading. And our 3 action steps for doing that, or meeting that goal, are targeted professional learning and coaching for our staff on EL strategies and best practices, again, especially with an emphasis on literacy for immigrant students. We also are focusing on adding some supplemental curricular resources in students' home languages in order to help with that transfer between home language and English. And we're also working on implementing supplemental newcomer instruction. Again, that's really focused on helping our students understand the differences between the countries that they are coming from and the United States in our school systems. And they're doing that work with our EL teachers. Any questions about the academic goal? So then that brings us to our family engagement goal. And this is covering a variety of needs that we saw pop up from our stakeholder surveys. So we're looking to increase the amount of translated school communications that are going home to our families, the family opportunities for connection to our schools, and increasing staff confidence in how they're going to, oops, I see that the image is covering up the last part of that phrase, but it says, it's supposed to say, the increased staff confidence in directly communicating with our multilingual families, or how do you do that when the family doesn't speak the same language as you? So in order to achieve that goal, we have 3 action steps around our coaching and training for staff on how to use interpretation tools and translation tools so that they can change languages when they're trying to communicate and contact our multilingual families. We also are offering new monthly informational immigrant parent workshops and support, and this is in collaboration with our community organization, Casa Guadalupe Education Center. And I'll talk a little bit more about an example of one of those workshops on the next slide. We also have implemented a monthly homework dinner offering to connect our parents, students, and teachers around a meal and doing homework together. So the idea is that our teachers are showing parents how you can do homework with your child even when you don't speak the language that the homework is in. We give them a little tips and tricks on what you can do to keep the learning going at home, even if you're not understanding the homework. This is in collaboration with Casa Guadalupe Education Center again, and the 4C Family Center, which is this beautiful open space that allows for a lot of collaboration. Any question about the family engagement goals? Okay, so here are some pictures of the grant activities that we've done so far this school year. It starts in the upper left corner with in orange. That's a staff workshop that's happening. So we're training staff in that one on how to use culturally and linguistically responsive best practices with EL students. And then across that top row, there are 2 blue pictures. That is from our one of our informational parent workshops around how to navigate Skyward. So Skyward is kind of a complex program for our families to navigate on their own. So especially when you don't speak the English, So we had a workshop where parents were shown how to download the app on their phone and how to log in, and basically introduce them to the wealth of information that they can connect to better understand what their students are doing at school. Then the bottom row has 3 pictures of our homework dinners. So that's taking place at the 4C Family Center. And you can see our families are connecting with their children around books. We talk with our families around if your child brings a book home or you get one from the library that's not in your native language, you can still use your language to talk about the pictures that you see happening in the story, even if you're not reading the words on the page, in order to really grasp that comprehension. And those skills transfer from a native language to English that helps bolster their success in the classroom. They also are connecting over some math facts and math skills, which we know can always be different depending on what country we're coming from as well. Learning math is something that we're helping our parents kind of navigate in that homework over a shared meal. So thank you guys so much for your time today. I'm wondering what questions you might have for me.
Any questions?
I am curious, knowing that we have the Act 20 that was recently passed, and I'm not exactly sure what question I have, but except for how might that impact, or how could this relay into better outcomes as we progress and formulate to adhere to the Act 21 requirements?
Just to clarify, you're asking how the grant activities could help increase our student achievement?
I think my question is around that, but
Are you asking more of a larger strategy and the comprehending this? And so Heather, I think you might have something to say. I can see you're ready.
So Michelle and I work together very closely and meet on a monthly basis, as well as with a larger group of EL teachers, and then on a weekly basis, just the 2 of us, and discuss just that. We discuss how Act 20 and how when we're talking about EL population and our immigrant students, what the impact of that will have with the curriculum that we choose or the primary resource that we choose. And then we also have been working together on newcomer curriculum and making sure that that supports those students as well. So there has been multiple conversations and abundant conversations about just that and supporting these students, ensuring that we're going to support them as much as we can through all of those activities and through the primary resources that we're looking at. Did I answer your question?
I think so.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what I want to ask, but I know that there's a lot of hurdles that these families are going to overcome, and how can we best support them, knowing that we have this new state regulation with the Act 20 coming, and then it just adds a little bit more to the whole mix.
Okay, so I think I understand your question a little bit better. So supporting them and understanding what the changes are going to be and how they can support their students and that communication. So those are continued conversations that we will have to have as we move forward, because there will be a lot of information that will have to go out to parents. But I think that the work that Michelle is already doing with her team in that communication and also with our staff in how they're communicating with the families is going to support that new information that's coming out, and we'll continue to look at ways that we can support them.
I love that idea of maybe having one of our parent informational workshops be around the changes that are coming with Act 20, knowing that they might be hearing some buzz around it. So that's absolutely a consideration. Thank you.
No questions, but congratulations on that. That is outstanding to be first in the state. That's really awesome.
Thank you so much. It's a team effort, absolutely.
Yeah, that's similar to what I was going to add. You know, just sharing your excitement of being first and getting such a large grant compared to all the other districts that had applied for it. So, congratulations, and thank you for sharing today.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Have a good one. Thank you.
All right, our next item on the agenda is a summary of the staff survey results regarding the book club vetting process for winter of 2024 and a discussion regarding recommendations. And this will be presented by Dr. Quinn Trueblood.
Oh, I got to get it on the screen.
Oh, boy.
Can you help me, Tina? Thank you. The mic is still live, so that's good. Thank you. While we're getting that set up, just a little bit of memory stroll. We did take the staff survey in fall, which was November, and so we have a second and final capture in winter because it was so important to get an early read on the process and also to make some critical improvements, which we did do, so that now we're in this gear of how did we do and what did it actually feel like. And I actually do believe that this survey does represent as much of an experience as you can have from the staff. And so just the comments themselves, just want to make sure I get this right, along with the data, creates a profile of what actually happened with our staff and our CNI team and everybody who was a part of the process. We had less participation than in the fall, but that's actually to be expected simply because there's duplication. There were several members, especially teachers, who would be asked twice to take this. And so what you'll see is you have about 9 who, I'm going to flip through these, not in chronological order because some of it is kind of a repeat, if that's okay with the committee. You'll see that 9 were repeat responders and 4 new ones. Nonetheless, the second wave is quite significant because we made some changes. So that's what we're really tracking right here. So there were some things that I want to just focus on, which is sometimes when you're doing a new process, you need some clarity. And so we did ask, did you understand the purpose? And I'm just going to not give you the actual numbers, but I think it's probably more important to say that we did have a gain of almost a significant 93% of our staff involved said that they do now better understand the purpose. And if we keep going across the deck here, almost 60% said they had understanding of their roles and responsibility in the process. We also say that we're, oops, sorry, I'm going too fast here. This is the 72%, sorry, that said that they were more clear on their roles and responsibility in that process. So this is an area where I think there's great insight. When asked about definitions and clarity on them, what we'll find here is that 64 did rate it to be very clear or clear, which is an improvement, and there's a deck later on that does show you fall to winter shifts. For sexual content and whether that definition was clear, only 43% said it was clear or very clear. That's still a little ways to go to, I would say, close to 80. So we were hoping that number would go up, but it did not as much, simply because we haven't redefined it. It's just operating with that definition as it was. When looking at the thresholds for obsessive obscene language, about 50% did have a clear, very clear understanding or a clear understanding of what these thresholds meant in terms of operating through the vetting process. Now, another key area was really preparation and communication. As you can see right here, whether adequately prepared or not, the majority did say that they were adequately prepared. When asked about clarity of communicating and what they needed through the process, I would say that we have over 50 said that they were very clear or clear. I'm kind of going through this. So at the end of the day, how did this affect the parents? And we had about fewer parents actually in this winter set. There was almost over 600 in the November capture. In this winter capture, we had about under 200, or 201, I think it looks like right here. So that's about a third of the parents from the prior capture. But 92 of those parents did return the permission slips. That means that 8 6% did not. And a total of 11 parents, or 6% of this set of parents, did return slips stating that they did not want their child to select certain books. There were quite a few, in this case, I think the actual, and these were true, unredacted, unaltered comments, and what I've noticed in this set here is that they were more comprehensive in their description of the experience, and it was a little bit more layered in terms of what it was really like. And the few things that came up, and I will just highlight them, is just the sheer load of time that it took. And really at the expense, time is a very limited resource. There's 24 hours in a day, and there's many obligations in life, and professional obligation is certainly a large chunk of it. But over and over and over, it was very clear that the time that it took to do a really good job created that load. And so, to be very clear, that shifted other priorities, other things that could have been done, and that's just a fact. The other thing was just, again, time and resources. So time is one thing, but actually having books that they could vet, books that they could bring forward, those are all important resources too. So you can see with, you'll see later on in the deck with the 108 titles that were eliminated, that really caused a bit of a stress to say what kinds of books can we move forward that we don't have already or that we do have already. These are all the inner workings of what happens when we vet these books. So that just caused, that was a real effect. And I would say the very last thing that came up in this is we are doing it better than we were the first time, and that is really to everybody's collaborative nature. But nonetheless, the stress meter didn't change. The stress meter did stay the same, but we got better at it. So that, I think, is a fairly decent summary, even though it would take a close read for some of these comments to kind of really understand it more deeply. So I'm going to move right through them, and I want to go to, I don't want to go to the summary deck so much because I just walked you through them, but I think what's really important here is to look at the fall and winter shift here. And I did highlight in the maroon boxes any positive shift in any of these process measures. And we did get several positive shifts in understanding purpose, in processes and procedures, in clarity of roles and responsibilities, in definitions, did improve. An area that did not improve, though, is the definition of sexual content. So that did not score higher than it did in the fall. We did get improvement a little bit on the definition of obsessive, obscene language, and feeling adequately prepared to execute process steps had a very minor shift. This was a significant downshift, was adequate resources and tools to execute the tasks. And I think that is reflective of some of the comments that were provided from our staff. And another one that did not shift forward positively was that feeling that, or reporting that they received clearer communication in their roles and responsibilities. There was a positive shift in the number of parents and guardians who returned slips. But I just have to say that, remember, we talked about the first capture at 84% being a totality of about over 600, almost 700 parents. We did get a higher percentage, but the overall amount of parents who participated was actually far lower. And then we have a very minor percentage comparison. There 8% versus 6% for the number of parents who did select not to have their students read certain books. If I recall right, there were about 84 parents in the fall who did select no to some book for their child, and there was about 11 who selected no in the winter collection. So what I think could be very valuable to the committee here after the second staff survey is that all of the recommendations actually carried over from the fall capture, but I think the very last one was just a small revision on the writing for this assessing the time load for the process. I think it was written differently in the first fall capture, but this would be probably an improved action item for recommendation that we would assess the time load for this process. And that actually concludes my set of recommendations from our department based on the data set. I will take any questions you have for our team.
Okay, so on the recommendations page, this would be what you would recommend that we would bring to the board for further discussion?
Yes, well, there's two ways to look at it. Definitely a recommendation to bring forward, but also you could also ask our team to develop a few more parameters for what that would look like for you to consider. So if we say, how would we engage teachers in the development of the process? We could, if you would like us to, we could think of different scenarios or different pathways for us to achieve that for you to consider. So these are just big ideas, but then if they are ones that are really important to the committee members, you could also ask us to develop it further or carry them forward as written.
I think some of these are really straightforward, and I would absolutely go along with the recommendations, like engaging teachers, continuing to meet with the teams for clarification. Things that I would look for more guidance on is when it says revised definitions of graphic violence, sexual content, and excessive obscene language. I struggle with that one because it's so subjective to objective to everyone's personal views. I think everyone at this table, even right now, would say that we have different limits on that. So that's the one that I don't know how you go with a recommendation on, other than continuing to do what we've been doing in looking at the parent results, the surveys from the parents, and seeing where each of those levels by grade is comfortable with, because I don't know a better way, because again, we would all have very different limits for that.
Thank you. I do have a response to the revision of definitions, and is simply for the sake of clarity. As written, they are actually super interpretive. So for instance, you'll see that explicit sexual content, if you look at the actual policy definition, I do believe our teachers and our administrators are saying that we have to interpret more than we need to. So it may not, revision would be for clarity. It would not be to substantively change, but to say, for instance, graphic violence, it'll say, and I should know this because I work with it every day, but it's not coming to me. It'll say something like a realistic depiction of XXXX. So sometimes when you look at that definition, realistic depiction, and then you have 4 things that stream off, it's not encompassing, but it's even interpretive or even limiting, depends on who's reading it. So we as a department have had to interpret that for our teachers. Ideally, what we would like is to have more clarity so that our teachers actually would be the eyes on it, not the department. That is actually the most significant shift that I would recommend, that we would have an operating definition that is more clear than what it is, so that the people who are doing the work of deciding whether or not it meets the threshold from the definition level would be our first eyes, would be our teachers. That is the very best setup, but as it is right now, I think the department will be left to interpret. And then our teachers don't get that first touch, and I think that is that there's huge potential risk there in the long run. Okay.
I have a question about, talking about the amount of time that it's taken the teachers and everybody to go through this. And I had seen in some of the comments, teachers said that, in a perfect world, summer would be a better time to be able to vet these books because they're not planning other lessons, and being able to read through them and whatnot. Is moving forward, is that something that we would be, I mean, I know it's their time off too, so it's like you don't want to be like, oh, can you get to work in the summer on your time off? But some of them had mentioned that, so I guess I was just curious what that looks like, or.
So I can tell you with great confidence that our teachers want to do their very best, and they want to manage their time, and they want to meet the standard that we are placing on them. So yes, if they had a choice, would I do it during the school year because I have to, or would I do it in the summertime? Absolutely, they would say it's best to have that flexibility. So remember, we didn't have that option in fall, but moving forward, I would highly, I mean, you can't, it is their time off, it is by choice, but I can tell you almost everybody who wants to do an amazing job would do this. And so that would definitely be an option. And we also have other times within the school year that we could craft. But I have to say, and I hope it's not premature, we do not want to spend this time load as we have this year on the ramp that we're in. So I would ask the committee that what we would develop and propose to you would be about lessening the time load, not maintaining it, and doing things more efficiently at a very high level. But you'll see in some of the recommendations from the parent survey that some of the mechanics of what we did can be undone because now we've tested it to say that we don't have to do it that way anymore. So there are some efficiencies that we can recommend to you because we cannot maintain it at this level. And I would say that we shouldn't because it's time and money all the time.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah. Is it all right if I move on to the next item because it really is the other half?
Yes.
So I would like to, let me see if I can go to the next one. Tina, will you help me with the next deck? Thank you. I'd like to thank Tina Van Roo for helping, not just helping, but she did develop the data set here and did co-read all of the material that was available for us to provide this results and recommendations summary for you. All right. So I know that this was posted from the original meeting date on February 12th, so I know that you've had time to look at it, so I won't belabor over it because it's not as fresh as it was before. But what I do want to do is just very much focus your attention on the things that I think and our department thinks is of great value for the purpose of the committee's work. So what is very apparent here is that 3,468 parents were contacted directly via email to participate in the study. And unfortunately, only 360 did complete the survey, and that amounts to about 10% of the overall population. So we have to really consider all of these results within the context of this, the parameters, that it is a very small sample. I wish that it could have been higher.
It is still a really good survey, though, like a response for survey. So I do a lot of surveys in my job, and I work in trade shows with hundreds of thousands of people, and 10% is actually a great survey response. So we should still be happy with that.
Okay, I'm happy with you then. Yeah. And what we notice is you can see that the percentage of participants or parents, they were more interested in the lower grades and less interested in the higher grades. I think that is to be expected. So you can see there were really very specific focus, which will dovetail into the recommendations to the committee, which is response to outcomes, what actually happened in the vetting process, comments on definitions, and also the threshold levels, and more specifically on how they want to be notified and the types of permissions that they preferred. So this particular presentation is organized by grade bands, which is very consistent with what the threshold levels were for obscene, obsessive language. So you'll see it graduate from grades 5, 6, and we'll move into the 7, 8 trend, and we'll move into the 9, 10 trend, and 11, 12. And due to some setting changes, we do have a mixed category where the original setting did allow for parents to access without verifying who they were. Simply, there's pros and cons, but at the end of the day, I think we have to, as an organization, have as much survey security as possible. So we landed there. So you'll see that group of data. So I'm gonna, oh, why am I slipping here? Let me go. Let me see. There we go. Okay. So it's kind of important to really understand who our students are in the eyes of the parents in this 5-6 grade band. So about 3 out of 4 students do read at home, anywhere between 10 to over 20 minutes. And I think that is just something the Literacy Council usually does want to profile what happens in the homes with students and what their behaviors are. So I think this is important to kind of really understand the kind of students we have who are readers at home. Asking about parents and responding to 108 books that were eliminated, we have almost a perfect split pie here, which means our parents said 1 of 4 things, so it's really hard to kind of really garner any understanding that is at any less than surface level. So they are split all across 4 here. In terms of importance of giving permission, this was the grade band that had the highest response for saying it was important. And that's actually very predictable. The younger you are, the more important it is for parents to know. So the data bears that out. Of the eliminated books, though, if you look at the 3 categories, what we notice that it's very, very much consistent across the 3 categories. 2 out of 3 parents did not eliminate, or in other words, 1 of 3 parents did choose to eliminate books. But what is maybe a little bit more detectable here is that the sexual content category was one that was of higher interest to parents. And that, I think, is also predictable. Speaking of permission preferences and also the type of format of the permission, what you see here is a highlight of the top percentages. And when they're just within 1 or 2 standard deviations, I just chose both. So our parents in the 5th and 6th grade did want detailed permission slip, but equal amount said they just want 1 blank. So they're kind of split in the middle. In terms of format, they really did appreciate the paper and electric forms. And so I think that's just about assurances for parents. When asked about, I know this came up in the board meeting last night, about the mechanism that if parents do not return slips, what are the options for the students? And parents did overwhelmingly, 2 out of 3 parents agreed that this was a good setup. Going to the 7-8 band, you'll start to see a little bit of a shift, not too much, but you'll see that there is a shift. So when I tell you, we have, this is the lowest shift in terms of readers at home. In this particular, we have 85 parents who submitted information. 1 in 2 students do read 10 or more than 20 minutes a night. In terms of the outcomes of the filter, we start to see a shift in more. I'm not in favor of this. The pie in that area, which is the largest at 35.3%, just gets a little bigger. And you'll see as we go through the grade bands, that particular pie section gets bigger, and the I am in favor gets smaller. So it's really the tension between the two, and you'll see that developmentally. In terms of notification, it starts also to shift that we have literally a split, 50-50, 43, 47, 46% on both sides. Some say it's really important, some say it's not. Split right down the middle. For eliminated books based on the 3, for eliminated books based on the 3 categories here, we see the very same profile. It's very close together, but we still have more interest in the sexual content. Okay. In terms of preferences and format, you'll see now you see this shift going down into I don't need permission at a 40%, or I need a 1 blanket permission at a 26, and I need it detailed. There's 2 things going on here. The majority are saying, no, I don't want it, but then the remainder are saying, I do, and I want a lot, and I want a little. So that's the profile of this parent set. In terms of format, they really said, again, I don't need it, or they said paper and electronic forms are good. Same thing, we start to see, again, a true appreciation for the mechanism for NAA Cross without parent permission. Going to the 9th, 10th band, we again see that same shift that's starting in the 7-8, but it's getting more pronounced. So we do have more readers at home, 2 out of 3 going back to the 5th, 6th band are reading 10 to 20 or more minutes. And then we start to see what I see is the largest shift in I'm not in favor of this outcome. We're almost at 50%. So I'll just draw your attention to the dark blue, and then you see a static 18% to say I am in favor of it. So that's the significant shift there. Notifications, we are again split, but it's shifting more to, no, it's not that important to me that my kids get permission for this. And again, amongst the three the 3 categories, we start to see graphic violence taking more interest. And you can see the order of interest in terms of what parents are looking for to screen these books for their kids. Permission slips, it's very resoundingly clear. They just don't need permission slip, and really it's high school. And so that is kind of a function of, that's a natural flow. There's nothing irregular in my mind about it or our team's mind. And again, a second vote for a permission slip is not needed. Okay, so again, we have a tiny bit of shift, but it's still a split in the middle in terms of, yes, I really do appreciate the limitations if parents are not responding. Now we have the very last grade band here. They are our 11th and 12th graders. We have 69 parents, and we do have more readers at this age at home, which I'm so happy to hear, and we're a little bit more than two out of 3 kids doing that. Okay, so I'm gonna go and you start to see the largest shift. It's just a small shift from the 9-10, but you start to see that pie be half again for the I'm not in favor, and the 18.8%, which I am in favor, stays the same. Okay. Importance, it really drops. It's not very important at all, at least on this scale. And then in terms of what their interest is in the 3 categories, it's pretty much indiscernible. It's pretty equal. Okay. Lastly, no permission slips needed for preferences and for format. Again, they're saying no permission slip. But if we were to do something of notice, what you start to see is electronic notice starts to have some value to students at this grade. And then we still have a pretty consistent 50-50 split on, thank you very much for the NAs and the strategy around parent notice there. The mixed grade is gonna be really a little bit not as easy to have confidence in because it is mixing 5 through 12 grade students, and it really is 52 responses. So I'll just go through them quickly. But what's probably important is that the parents who did submit this also did have feedback that was captured in the comment sections. And I think that's where the true value is, because I can't discern where all of this is with such a broad band and 52 responders. So even with this 52 response set, we're still split in the middle, slightly more in favor of, now we're hitting past 50% of not in favor of this outcome. And you see the 7.7% is the smallest pie. Remember, this is the hardest set to interpret, but this is the data. If we look at this, it's not, you start to see sexual content also to be of higher interest than the others in terms of what they're looking for on these lists. Lastly, for preferences, we see no permission slip being reaffirmed and also no permission slip for format, again, being preferred. We see a resounding larger category of yes, it's a good thing that we're doing this the way we're doing it for NA categories. So this is, I will go, now we are going to the next, I think the next significant part, because it was quite, there were literally 18 to 20 pages, and which I think is a real win, because now as a researcher, you always want to remind yourself, and I do this to myself all the time, so I'm sharing some parameters in terms of how our team is looking at the comment section. Remember that one person's comment can be very long and very deep, and one person's comment can be a one sentence. They are equal in the eyes of the researcher, let's just say. And one comment that is sort of high interest still should be quite weighted the same as one of less interest, just because we try not to place too much value or bias on the things that we prefer or don't prefer. That's just something we should remember when we're looking at the whole slide deck. And remember, the numerical data includes more people. So you don't want to prefer numerical over comments, and you don't want to prefer the comments over the numerical. They are meant to complement each other to create a totality of understanding. So I will be done with my, my thing about that. But as you can imagine, some of these comments were of high interest to me too. I'm a real person, and a professional, and a mom, and a sister, and everything else, a real person, as we all are as we read these. But what I want to show you is that there are ways to really, that our team wanted to present this so that it could be helpful to the process. So I will get right to it. We have 3 areas where we ask parents to respond to in terms of comments. So it was very clear for obsessive obscene language that there was really good agreement, that it was appropriate for the 5th, 6th, and 7th grade bands. We start to see more disagreement in the 11th, 12th grade, and we also start to see comments that say it's too restrictive. We need to make it less restrictive for the high school students. And on the definitions themselves, there weren't that many comments, but there were comments that said that, yes, they are subjective, and it is vague, and especially harder to apply in the high school level. I'm sure that we understood this operationally, but it's really good to see the parents also recognize that, hey, this is not clear, this is hard. We understand the challenge here, along with the committee and along with our department and our staff. On the application of the filters themselves, there was really agreement between the 5th and 6th, but again, we start to see less agreement through the 7, 8, 12 band. One of the things, or there are several bullets here that were big ideas that continue to be reoccurring ideas, so we itemized them. There were comments about limiting family opportunities to discuss topics in the real world through this process as they understood it, because it came to them in a permission slip. They also talked about the need to consider contextual evidence and the significance of the story, again, context, considering literary merit, considering educational value, and considering student interest. Now, these are all the same things that maybe our department, maybe the committee has also noticed. And our teachers absolutely would be the first defenders of this, but I think it's good to see our parents also come into these different thoughts after review. If we go to sexual content, though, the overall summary is that there was agreement on this threshold for none of sexual content in the 5th and 6th grades, 7 and 10, 9 and 10. There begins to be quite a bit of disagreement in the 11th, 12th grade, and as you remember in the board work session, we thought we would run into this. And yes, it's really proof now that our parents would agree with us. It also was stated that it needs to be less restrictive because the 9 through 12 band it's just hard to find, it's a challenge. And on the definitions themselves, it is not clear what an explicit sex act is. And I'm not sure we can actually make that, we're never gonna make it crystal clear, but I think the ask here is to make it more clear. The definition is unclear as stated by the parents, and they see that as also subjective. Another comment was that it would be good to align it to the health curriculum, and also there are other rating systems out there for movies and gaming systems that may be considered. Lastly, for the application of the filter, the response was they agreed in general in grades 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9, 10, and there was significant disagreement in 11 and 12 and in the mixed grades. And the very last category was graphic violence, and right now the present threshold is 0. And so the response to that 0 is it is too restrictive at the high school level. It needs to be less restrictive and adjusted for developmental ages. It needs exclusion for historically accurate content, and it needs exclusion for specific literary genres. This was not, we have discovered this on our own, through our own process with the committee and through the many, many months, but you can start to see that our parents are also voicing this. On the definition itself, it is remains subjective and vague in general. And on the application, the filter itself, there are several ideas here. There was more agreement in the 5th and 6th grade, and it gets progressively less there's less agreement in the higher grades. There was quite a lot of disagreement with the removal of the slavery-themed books, and there was quite a lot of depth of thought around that from our parents. There's also disagreement on the removal of historically accurate books. There's also a call for consideration for the contextual significance of the story and literary merit. We've seen that before, educational value, student interest. And the very last one, which we haven't seen in the other two categories, was considering value of lessons from real-world issues and events, for which I think this graphic violence category probably demonstrates most clearly. Okay. So I'd like to take a little break and walk through again a summary of the results. And I think this particular deck is kind of a the biggest picture we have right now from our parents in this first survey. 10% did participate, and 41% of our students, of our parents and guardians did not favor the 108 books that were eliminated. So these percentages were actually reported based on the highest percentages available for that question. So that's the order. So you might say, well, 41% is not that high. It's not, but statistically, we're not creating value around that. We're just telling you what the highest percentage was, so you can see it. 84% of our parents and guardians allowed full choice of books regarding obscene language. 78% of our parents did allow full choice for books regarding sexual content. And 81% of our parents allowed full choice regarding books with graphic violence. This is fairly consistent because we did notice in those pie charts that sexual content was the one that was of highest interest to our parents, so you'll start to see that it had the lowest percentage overall. 39% of our parents stated that permission slips are not needed, and the same amount of parents and guardians said that when given a choice of permission slips, stated that they just don't want one, don't need one, I should say. And 35% rated the importance of giving permission as low. So in terms of the feedback from the comments, these were the themes that arose that were other than what I presented earlier. So this is another capturing. There were the themes included, and trusting our teachers is a significant theme. Keeping our parents and guardians informed is also important. Needing an opt-out option for parents and guardians. You'll see later on in the recommendations, as we read through those comments, it became very clear to us that our parents actually were kind of confused about getting permission slip, having to check off something, and then having to sign off on it. It's just not what we normally do. We normally just say, do you want to go on this trip or not? And then if you don't want to go on this trip, then we have to do something else for you. But this two-step process actually was a little bit, I wouldn't say a little bit, it actually was quite extraordinary for our parents, given the comments that they were giving. Does that make sense to you? It just wasn't done before, so they actually were a little bit like, what's happening? And then when they finally got to understanding it, they realized, oh, I'm okay with that, I don't really need it, or I do need it. So that's where you start to see some recommendations that might help parents that way. And another theme was to not ban or censor books. So that word came up quite a bit in commentary. Also, allowing students to choose was also important, and offering books that provide exposure to worldviews was important to our parents, and there was political commentary on both sides of the fence, almost equal. In terms of recommendations, there's actually three categories that I would like the committee to consider. One is, and we started this with our staff survey already, but I do think it's important, and it will be significant if there is more clear definitions for those three categories, especially for our teachers. Identifying exclusions for genres, literary genres, and also identifying exclusion for historically accurate content. It's repeating itself in many different forms in the data collection. In terms of the threshold levels, it looks like there is evidence and data to support that they definitely need adjustment, especially for the high school level, and more pronouncedly, almost absolutely necessary for the 11-12. Okay. And maybe a little bit more detailed here that the threshold exception for historically accurate content and specific literary genres in grades 5-12 really do need to be addressed. Otherwise, we will be finding ourselves in the same kind of loop that we're trying to get out of. That is, I know that at yesterday's school board meeting, there was a distinction made in the discussion with the board members, with you, that historically accurate content is different than historical nonfiction. There's a distinction. And so I just want to make clear that we're talking about historically accurate content, not historical nonfiction. And then the very last category of recommendations is notification of permission slips. What our teachers and our parents and our committee, our department would say is that we think, and it sounds dramatic, but the elimination of permission slips as they're designed right now needs to happen. And so what we would propose in place of that is we do have notification. We do have some form that is electronic and paper copy in the 5th, 6th grade. We do have electronic mail that is informing our parents in the 7-12 level, and that we simplify and standardize that format so it's easier for parents. And also that we would assure there's a quarterly book list. The third bullet under this category is actually the way to address the elimination of a permission slip is to create some standardized opt-out, which is what we typically have in schools right now. You opt out of it, so you would opt out of wanting to do all of that. So you might have, I'm a parent who will do full choice, and does that make sense? And we can tease out what that looks like, but I just want to put it on your radar that that is a very standard option that schools use all the time for a number of different things that ask parents to inform and also ask them for permission for. Okay? And lastly, we definitely know that we want to encourage communication with our teachers, with the parents. And that has been lost in the process through the system, building the vetting process as we have to day by day. That did cut out our teachers. And I think that is a real disservice to our parents, and it's a disservice to our teachers. And I would like to recommend a full restoration of that. Because right now, I'm holding the bucket. My name is on everything. So everything comes to me, and I am one person with a small but mighty team, and we have quite a few parents. And so the shuttle that we had to build to make this work appropriately with the highest level of precision we could to meet the board's demands was it had to be through the literacy specialists and through the principals and through the district librarian to communicate with our teams of teachers so that we would not lose the balls, if you will. So we cannot maintain that, and we shouldn't, and I think we have different ways to do that, but that's something that I just wanted you to know, that in that process, we lost the connection with our teachers and our parents. So that actually concludes my formal presentation to you, and I do know that this is a structured discussion, but certainly if you would like to add or revise any of these discussion topics, it is yours to do.
anybody have any comments or questions? It's a lot of information to take in, and so.
I really appreciated how many comments we got. Like, I know it was a small sample of people, but you feel across the board the passion behind some of these comments. And I really appreciate parents taking the time to fill this out with real, with their real passion behind it and real emotion behind it.
Yeah, I guess I just wanted to add, I think like a big takeaway for me through all of this is really just like focusing on age appropriate, right? Because how we have like the violence at 0, right? And it's like I've got older, my son's gonna be in high school next year too, and so and I know that like he watches war movies and there's violence in it and he's always just like, Mom, it's fine, So, but I do think age appropriateness was like just the big thing that stuck out to me through all of this. And so, moving forward, I think we do have to kind of maybe lessen some of the parameters on the higher grade levels. So I am in agreement with that, because I know it's hard to find accurate things without that even. So, yeah.
I can see how the comments related to the upper classes in the high school, the 11 and 12, I can see how that can be just a vast variety of maturity in those grades. And some of those kids are involved in the college curriculum. And so they're very mature and academically advanced, I would say, or, in line with a college student if they're taking those classes through Moraine Park and whatever. So I can see why we wouldn't necessarily have to have as much constraint on what they're reading. They're pretty much adults and can read what they want, I would guess. But I'm still, I'm a little bit unsure of the eliminating of the permission slip. At my first there's so much work put into it, and I'm not sold on that idea yet, but I do like finding other ways to address ultimately where we're getting. But I just want to say that I'm not 100% sold on the removal of or elimination of the permission slip.
Couldn't that part of it be part of registration at the beginning of the year? Because isn't that something that every student has to do via Skyward? Like, could that be something in these grade levels that I'm sitting down, I'm checking every other box, I'm looking at, making sure everything else is, and that's drawing attention to it?
I'll look into that for sure.
At least the opt-out, like, I know that maybe I'm not sure, so maybe I want to be contacted throughout the year, or I know for sure that I'm going to let my kids read these books, so opt me out of, and at least it's one time for at least a portion. I don't know if that makes more work or not, so.
My recommendation is I don't want the committee to come up with how to do it. If you tell me that it is something, only because you don't have the mechanics, I'll tell you who knows how to do it is our teachers. And so I would like to take it back to them and say, okay, for a junior level class, what makes the most sense that captures the highest fidelity to parent information and also allows you to, because you'll see in some of the comments that it takes a long time to print these things. It takes a long time to do these mechanical pieces. And so I think I would say to the committee that the people who know to do this best are our teachers.
I 100% agree. My recommendation is to put the recommendations on the teachers on how they want that.
Could I add in like the kind of thought process behind this? Dr. Truebwood had mentioned earlier that in the comments, parents were expressing a confusion between permission slips. We sent these home, but then on it, they kind of had to opt out, and no matter what they thought, everyone had to return something. So we were almost creating a new definition for permission slips, and it caused confusion. In this new proposed process, we would keep a version of the book lists with all of the resources, links, all the work that went into it. And people would get them on a quarterly basis. That way, if you have a 5th grader versus a 12th grader, that family would experience a similar time frame in getting the info. On that list would be a potential opt-out process, and only the people that want to opt out would be required to return it. So that is, it's more like informed consent. Everyone's getting the list, the information, the thresholds, the categories. So all that work is honored and provided, but not everyone has to return the sheet. And then we would follow an opt-out process, which is standardized for, SEL or other district initiatives. So that was kind
So
of the
they're
logic
opting out on,
behind
they
it.
don't want to return the slip, that, just to be clear. Like, they're just giving clearance. That's what they're opting out of. They don't want to do this because they just don't want to do it. I mean, that's a parent's preference, actually. Some people are like, no, I'm not going to, I don't want to do this. But then if they don't do it, then the kids don't get their choices that they want as full choice. So you see the confusion. I mean,
So there would still be an option for parents that don't want their kids to read certain books. Like, it would still come home, and then they would just have to turn it in if they didn't want them to
yes.
make certain choices. But that option would still be there.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
That's the standard
'Cause, I
option,
mean, there
but
is
parents can
still-
say they don't want
even
that.
if it's a small portion of
sure.
families, like it is, I feel like it is still serving, those families that do want to know, right? And I know there's a lot of parents that probably don't care, and they're like, yeah, read whatever you want.
Yeah, so to
I
be
don't
very
have time
clear.
to fill this out, so. Yeah.
To be very clear, this proposal to eliminate permission slips and to do an opt-out procedure is to make it more clear for parents. It is not to lessen the standard of notice and lessen the standard of permission. It doesn't touch that at all. But for parents who say, I want my kids to read all the books available all the time. I don't want to be bothered with all this. That's something that parents are saying too. So I hope that is more clear to you after this discussion piece, that we are not lowering information standards or permission standards. We are just giving parents more options that are more workable for them and their preference. Okay, yeah, thank you. And I also, this didn't come up, but in terms of, there was one of the recommendations, I'm going to go back here, was to standardize, to simplify and standardize the format of the information. There has been quite a lot of, there was the misstep with the erroneous email send, as some of you know because you were parents in the middle school. If you look at how it is set up and the information that's on there, we have seen it so many times because we're working with it. But the teacher rationales, the certain words that are on there, the kind of descriptions that are on there, it is actually not representative of the book. And so I just want to put the challenge out there. I want to put the statement out there that this is very challenging for parents when you give them this information too. It is. I mean, you're parents, you know. So I'd like to at least maybe set aside for now, but there must be a way to standardize and simplify the form so that it is representative of what this book really is about. And so just as much as we're informing them of what's out there in other critiques from third parties, and we have found that some of those critiques are really very much just regular people having opinions. I mean, it's just the fact. And so some of it has been inaccurate, and some of it has been just a case of true interpretation, simply as that. So that has caused, honestly, our team and our teachers to do a lot of digging in the weeds, and I just think that is literally a huge amount of time that I don't know if has great value at this point. I just want to put it out there that that's really one of those things that we found ourselves chasing around. But anyhow, it's not bad. We just did it and we learned something from it. That's what happened. So I'd like to just say that when we talk about simplifying and standardizing the format, I really would like to say that we should not keep it the way it is if we want to move it forward into its more finished state at some point, okay? Okay, Other questions or comments you have about these recommendations? So I would propose that I just want to walk through the curriculum committee's role and responsibilities. You have acted in the role of ensuring that the process is being worked through as intended, and it's been many challenges, and your responsibility and role right now would be to bring forward some recommendations for the board. So what I'd like to do is, if all of these recommendations, and we can scratch any of them, we don't have to do it now, but at the next board meeting, I think it would, at the next curriculum committee meeting, I think it would be a good time to second read the recommendations, but also to set them into motion for the board to consider. Okay? So that would be the two things that we would accomplish at the next committee meeting, and that would result in at some point formalizing those recommendations to move forward for discussion for the board. Okay, and if there's anything else in the meantime before we get to that final stage, it would be the right time for you to ask us to do some additional work, or some looking at things or building things to consider. Those would be the good times to do that, okay? That concludes this agenda item then, I think. Thank you.
All right. If nobody has any further questions, are there any objections to adjourning the meeting? No. All right, then I will go ahead and close the meeting. It is 5:41, and